welcome back to another episode of Cracking the Shell on Psychological Science. I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike.
And today we have Dr. Dave Yager with us.
Hi, nice to be here.
Yeah, welcome to the show, Dave.
Dave, so today we're going to talk about your class that you teach on sleep. Can you remind us what the title of that course is, and generally what's the ideas that you cover in that class?
So the course is called The Science of Biological Rhythms in Sleep, and we talk about the natural rhythms, the natural 24-hour rhythms that humans have, and how they affect our lives, and in particular, how they affect sleep. And then we go on and talk about lots and lots of details about how we sleep, when we sleep, why we sleep, and how we can improve our sleep.
Is there anything about the course that, as a student, that they might find of practical relevance to them?
Well, a lot. So one of the distinctive features of this course is that we talk a lot about sleep theories and circadian rhythm theories, but they directly relate to aspects of students' lives and can have immediate effects on their lives. So for instance, talking about the effects of coffee. We talk about the effects of coffee on students' brains, but also how coffee can influence their performance in school, or not, depending on how they use it.
Does coffee help or hurt, I have to ask?
It can help if you do it at the right times of day and if you do it in moderation.
What about the debate between sleeping and studying? I hear my students all the time saying, I was up till 4 a.m. studying. Is that a good strategy?
No, it's not. Anytime you stay up longer than 16 hours or so, you start to feel sleepy and your cognitive performance goes down and you lose the ability to remember things that you've been studying. So pulling an all-nighter is in many ways counterproductive, because you're not likely to remember what you studied very well. And the next day when you're taking the test, the sleep deprivation compromises your ability to think, and so you're not going to do as well on the test. So it sort of gets you in a couple of different ways. So if you got to choose between sleep and study, choose sleep.
Interesting. Do you mind if I pivot to a slightly different topic? So you're widely known as sort of being very innovative with the way you teach your classes. I'm always impressed with the things you do in your class, how you manage your class. And so can you tell us a little bit about your course? What are the unique things about your course, or what makes your course unique? Well,
part of it is the immediate consequences that the students get from studying the circadian rhythms of sleep. From the technical point of view, I've been doing this course without assigning grades to students. Essentially, students assign their own grades.
Do they like it? Do they like that?
They do. This doesn't mean that they do less work. And in fact, I've structured the course so that there are a lot of small assignments throughout the course so that the students can see their own improvement as the semester goes on. And then 3 times during the semester, the students do essentially self-assessments. And based on that self-assessment, they assign themselves a grade. And then at the end of the course, there's a final self-assessment where they decide what final grade they think they deserve based on what they've learned over the course of the semester.
I'm sorry to be skeptical here about this, but are we ending up with all A's for students, or what's the result of this system?
Not at all. In fact, the grade distribution that I've had for the last 2 or 3 semesters is not very different from the grade distribution that I got when I was doing it with grades that I assigned.
Do you think students are harder on themselves than...
Some students are. And in fact, the final grade proposals last semester, class of 22, 16 of the proposals were fine. 2 of the proposals, I actually raised the grades. And then the other ones, I made little tweaks on the grades, but nothing very substantial. So they do a good job.
Yeah. No, I think some of the classes that I teach, I feel like the value is what the student knows at the end of the semester.
Yes.
So, a lot of the classes build on knowledge, and maybe a student is going to have a hard time after 2 weeks of understanding this knowledge. But at 3 months, if they're able to complete this assignment, why should that grade that's 2 weeks in be penalizing them, right? Now they can do the math, now they can do the science. So that's what we really want, right? Ultimately, I think it's student learning. So that's interesting. I've never heard of someone going so extreme that the students are assigning their own grades, but it sounds like it's working perfectly, really. That would be an ideal for me.
Well, what you say is true, absolutely true. Improvement is one of the most important parts from my point of view as an educator. The other part is for students to realize that everybody has potential.
Yeah.
And some of the students who start the course kind of discouraged for them to say why, so that they can then see their improvement across the semester, is really very self-affirming for these students.
Probably like an experience that's really meaningful to them too, just in their educational journey, I'd imagine. That's really great that you're doing that.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've thought this, but also in discussions with other colleagues. Like, I don't really care what grades my students get. I mean, to me, that's sort of secondary. Like, the goal is learning. And if we could do away with grades, I would be perfectly happy with that. But it sounds like you found a way to find, I don't know if you'd call it a happy medium, but a place where you can do away with grades in a certain sense.
Yeah.
I think that's true. The basic reason I did this was I saw students just with awful stress about their grades. And so this strategy was basically to take stress away from them so that they could focus on the learning.
Right.
And really get some joy out of learning. And because they had control over their own grades, I think that makes a difference, makes that possible.
One of the things we talk about in PSYC is once you set a performance metric for something, that performance metric can be hacked, and then it's no longer actually representing what you intended it to represent. So this idea of like setting a grade as the goal to get an A, all of a sudden maybe it's supposed to represent learning, but ultimately now it's representing how can I hack the system to just get an A. And I think if you're doing that as a student, you're not obviously getting the intentional benefits. So this is nice to hear from that perspective too.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Well, Dave, this has been a wonderful little conversation. I'm glad we could have you on to talk about this. If they want to take the course, what's the course number?
The course is PSYC414.
Okay. Are there any prerequisites for it?
Prerequisite is just an intro neuroscience course.
Oh.
So NER 200 would be fine.
Yep. Sweet.
It was great to have you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Thanks.